Per reports, there was talks around the NFL that the Pittsburgh Steelers had struck a deal for a wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers, but it fell apart late. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, we all know that they're in need for a wide receiver, whether that's via trade, via free agency, just someone who could come in this season and be a reliable number 1 or number 2 option, deciding on which direction they go. We all know they have George Pickens, but outside George Pickens, they really have no experience on the roster in terms of a high-value receiver. Yes, we have Roman Wilson, who could come in as a rookie and really prove things. We have Kelvin Austin going into year 3, basically year 2, based off his injury. And then we have Van Jefferson, who used to be a number 3 with the Rams, and then Quez Watkins coming in, trying to earn a spot, and some other guys as well. So there's talks around the Steelers in terms of trying to get another receiver, however. And per reports, they were actually so close to landing a receiver at the draft via trade. But before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like the video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, though it seems that the ship has sailed on the Steelers trying to trade for any San Francisco 49ers wide receiver, whether that be Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel, the team may have come close to pulling off a deal during draft weekend, because on his GM Shuffle podcast, analyst and former NFL general manager Michael Lombardi dropped this news that Omar Khan might have come very, very close. He said this, in quotes, "There was talk that at the draft that the Pittsburgh Steelers thought that they had made a trade. Whether it was for Deebo or whether it was for Aiyuk, I don't know, but then things kind of fell apart late." End quote. So, Lombardi, he didn't comment further on this, so it really makes it a speculative comment. And in terms of the Pittsburgh Steelers time frame, it kind of makes sense because rumors and speculation swirled in the days and weeks leading up to the draft, especially after the Steelers restructured outside linebacker Alex Highsmith's contract 24 hours before round 1 started of the draft. So this report or this comment made by Lombardi is kind of a speculative comment in terms of my eyes, because there was really no other further official report by anyone else saying this. So this basically comes as I heard this first, and I'm the only person who heard this because no one else is talking about this. So just regarding Lombardi's comments, just say they are true. And he's referring to any talk in those exact terms. Perhaps maybe the Steelers were so confident that they were about to land a 49ers receiver, so they began clearing up cap space to assume a contract extension and allow the trade to go through. Maybe that's why they cleared the cap space and they restructured Alex Highsmith's contract, because obviously Lombardi is referring to the Pittsburgh Steelers thought that a deal was going to be struck, but then it fell apart late. Maybe that's the reason why a day before the draft, where Lombardi said the trade almost happened at the draft, they cleared Alex Highsmith's contract to open up cap space for this season. So most trade speculation involved Brandon Aiyuk, though some believed Deebo Samuel could be the player out the door instead. Actually, a couple weeks, or actually the week of the draft, there's a report going out there that said Deebo Samuel was more likely to be moved than Brandon Aiyuk, even though the weeks prior, it was that Brandon Aiyuk was basically out the door for the San Francisco 49ers. So those were the reports, all leading up through the draft. Obviously, the 49ers general manager isn't going to come out and say, hey, we're looking to trade one of these two or both of these guys. He's going to come out and say, we want to extend them. He's not going to come out and say, we want to trade them. So obviously, that's what happened. 49ers general manager said, hey, we want to extend these guys. But obviously, the reports, the media, they know different. They kind of had the inside scoop in terms of the leverage between the agents and the general manager. And they basically said that one of these two guys are more likely to be gone and they're going to be traded. So the Pittsburgh Steelers were obviously always linked to this situation for many months. It's basically since the whole offseason started, the Steelers have been linked to one of these two guys, linked to the San Francisco 49ers via trade. And what would it take for the Steelers to get one of these guys? what would the extension look like? Because one of these guys want to be the highest paid receiver probably in the NFL. They want to go around with Amon St. Brown of the Detroit Lions wide receiver contract extension. So if they get traded, they need a contract extension. And Steelers were always linked to this, no matter who it was, whether it would be Tyler Boyd, just an outside free agent, whether it would be Brandon Aiyuk, whether it would be Deebo Samuel. Even at one point, I believe it was Justin Jefferson, when the trade rumors around him were speculating because of the contract situation. So Steelers have always been linked to a wide receiver no matter what, and I'm pretty sure it's just easy to link the Steelers to anyone at this point. And this is what's happened again with Lombardi saying a deal was almost struck. And you know what's interesting about this situation too is because just say the Steelers were close to getting a deal done for a wide receiver, whether it be Deebo Samuel or Brandon Aiyuk of the 49ers. What makes it interesting is if you look who the San Francisco 49ers drafted very early in this year's draft, it was a wide receiver. It was Purcell. They drafted Purcell so early in the draft that it had many people wondering what they were going to do at wide receiver and if a trade was near. So maybe the 49ers too thought the Steelers were about to strike a deal with them for a wide receiver, so they went out and drafted Purcell. But then a deal didn't get through, and they just had Purcell as well alongside all these other guys. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's why they have so many wide receivers on the roster right now. They have Deebo Samuel, they have Brandon Aiyuk, they have Purcell, who was drafted very early in the draft. I believe it was either round 1 or round 2. I don't really know exactly. They have Juwan Jennings, who they just signed an extension to. They have so many guys at wide receiver that maybe they thought that one of these guys were about to get shipped out, so they drafted Purcell. But who knows? Maybe they just wanted 4 receivers, four talented wide receivers at that, alongside George Kittle, alongside Christian McCaffrey, and all the other guys they have on the team. So, obviously, the Steelers, based off Lombardi's comments, the deal did fall through, meaning that maybe it could get talked about later on and some trade can happen. But looking at a comment made by another Pittsburgh Steelers insider by the Post-Gazette, Ray Filippo, he said that the Pittsburgh Steelers, they will have a number 2 receiver on their roster come September who is not on their roster now. I think it will be either Aiyuk or Samuel. I think there is another shoe to drop out there in San Francisco. They have too many good receivers. End quote. So obviously he believes as well that a trade still will get done with the San Francisco 49ers for number 2 receiver, and the Pittsburgh Steelers still don't have the number 2 on the roster. But the thing about that is that would assume that Brandon Aiyuk, who would be getting paid nearly $30 million, would be a number 2 receiver and not a number 1 receiver. Yes, we have George Pickens, but you're paying a number 2 receiver $30 million? No, that would make him a number 1 receiver and make George Pickens back to number 2. Same thing with Deebo Samuel. You could assume based off of just the contract alone. But obviously, an insider, Post-Gazette, Ray Filippo, says that the Steelers' number 2 receiver is not on the roster, so you could assume that a trade maybe still might happen for a receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, in terms of my thoughts about this, is if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to trade for a receiver, make it be Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, Justin Jefferson. Even though those probably have no chance of happening anymore, if they do trade, make it for one of those guys, because those are needle movers in terms of going for a Super Bowl. But if you get a guy like Courtland Sutton, is that really going to move the needle? He may be gone in one season, and you're just giving out draft picks if you're not going to win a Super Bowl, which doesn't make sense. So I believe, obviously, Calvin Austin, he's been undervalued so far. It's been many talks about him not even making the roster, which doesn't make sense because he's only a year 2. I'm going to make a video on that completely. But he needs to take the next step. Roman Wilson, first year. Obviously, George Pickens being the number 1 wide receiver now. There's many guys who are going to have more playing time, more opportunity, and let's see what they could do. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about this topic, about the Steelers almost striking a deal for a San Francisco 49ers wide receiver. Do you want it to still happen? Would you rather be Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk? Who do you think would better fit this roster and help this team more? And also, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. I cover everything, whether that be rumors, whether that be highlights, reactions, analysis, or just news and updates in general. I cover all. I'll continue to cover all. So turn on notifications, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all later. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.